welcome to everyone who's joined us on the second webinar, which is integrating Workday back into reality. For those who missed the first webinar a couple of weeks ago, which was COVID-19 and how it's affected the Workday ecosystem, for anyone who did miss that, you can download it via the blog. So just reintroducing the webinar series, it's focused 24/7. Every 2 weeks, we're going to have a guest on. This week, we have a very, very special guest, and we'll move on to that in a moment. And I will introduce you, don't worry. The format of the webinar is going to be, we're going to pick a topic to discuss. And of course, this week, we're talking about integrations in Workday. And then we're going to open it up to the audience to ask questions. And we're going to try and get through as many questions as possible, because in the first webinar, we did miss out quite a few. There was quite a few questions that came thick and fast. So we changed the format slightly for this one to try and get through some more questions for you guys. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mr. Cian Egan to the webinar. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Very well, very well. Thank you for having me.
No, you're very, very welcome. Thank you for making the time to come on.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Just want to do a little bit of an introduction into Cian, and I'll also talk about how myself and Cian got to meet and the time we spent during the first time we ever met each other, right? Yeah. But we're we're blessed to have you on the show this week. You've got 16 plus Workday projects. So one of the most experienced guys in the Workday ecosystem from a technical perspective. Mm-hmm. You've also been involved in the Workday ecosystem since 2012. Correct. And you are, I believe, one of the only people in the whole of certainly the EU market, possibly globally, to have completed the Holy Trinity. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. Holy Trinity.
So for those who are on, who don't know what the Holy Trinity is, it's working for the vendor themselves. So you've worked for Workday. Right. You've also worked in the SI space.
Yep.
And you're also now an independent contractor, actually working through Focus Cloud, aren't you? Are you happy with Focus Cloud?
I'm just joking. You didn't tell me this was going to be a testimonial.
So for those, I said we was going to discuss how we met. It's quite an interesting story, actually. We invited Cian to one of our track days, and where was it, Cian? Is it the Donington one?
It was Donington, yeah, that's right.
It was.
Donington.
And in the morning, I actually came to your house to pick you up, didn't I?
You did a chauffeur service the whole way up.
And the whole way back.
And the whole way back.
Yeah. I didn't leave you there, did I?
No, in the car that we raced in.
Yeah.
So that was
so I came to pick you up in the GTR. Yeah. And it was the first time we'd actually met each other. We'd spoken a few times on the phone, of course, but
never actually met before that point.
Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah.
We were both quite tired, and I didn't fall asleep either.
4 a.m. I think we met, wasn't it?
It was 4 a.m. Yeah, it was 4 a.m. And so myself and Cian, we spent probably 6 hours together, and what really struck me, and we actually placed you on contract very shortly after that as well, didn't we?
That's right.
And I think it was like a result of that time we got to spend together that day, because no matter what area I've ever recruited in, I've done Oracle, SAP, and obviously Workday. Generally, when you speak to technical consultants, it can be quite difficult to talk to those types of people because you're very technically minded. And I'm not even going to say I was dreading that trip. I wasn't at all, actually. I didn't know what to expect because I'd never met you, and what I was so surprised with, and on the whole way up there, you indulged me in technical Workday speak, but actually it didn't. I'm not saying that Workday's boring. It's not at all. But sometimes conversations can go a little bit too technical,
Yeah,
and if you're not technically minded, as I'm not, I'm obviously from the recruitment side. It
yeah,
can be a bit, it
scary,
wasn't
right?
like that.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
wasn't like that. So,
yeah.
so really, really pleased that you've decided to come onto the webinar today.
Thank you so much.
So,
And
so just to the attendees as well, please make sure when you're asking Kian the questions that you'd like to get the answers to, please make sure you're putting that to everyone rather than just the particular participant, and we can make sure that we ask as many of those questions as possible. Okay,
right.
so I'll open up with topic one, Kian.
Okay.
So a lot of customers have obviously been through this Workday journey before, right?
Yeah.
So there's quite a few implementations out there now,
Right,
but there are
exactly.
some customers out there that are still looking at Workday very much so.
Yeah.
From a technical perspective, what do you think the most important thing that a customer needs to do before they start their Workday journey?
Yeah. Before you start your Workday journey, for me, Lloyd, it's all about strategy. And to get to where you are going to go to, you need to understand where you've been. So strategy involves your enterprise architecture, listing out the integrations that you have today, how they're connected in your landscape diagrams, making sure that you have one of those and it's up to date. And you need to focus on the strategy of integration. So how will you integrate Workday back into your reality? Because there's potentially for a lot of clients out there, they've got this very big, broad set of systems. They may be in business for a long time. So over time, they've built up a large collection of systems. And now this really fancy, shiny Workday tool comes in. And how do you integrate that back in? And so strategy, doing that initial phase before you actually begin your Workday implementation is very important. So you can basically set up the right tools for the job. So that's the most important thing for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that from your perspective, is it absolutely essential for a customer to do that? And what would be the typical result if a customer didn't do that before an implementation? So what types of issues would they be coming across in their project?
So I'm quite conservative by nature. So I would say, yes, you absolutely have to do that at every stage. Maybe some people would say you don't, and you maybe do it as you go and have a completely agile experience. But for me, you really do need to do that planning phase up front before the actual Workday methodology, the strategy phase. If you don't do that, what you may come up with later on in time is a system that is not, or a collection of systems, or a collection of experiences that are not designed as well as they could have been. So I'll give you maybe a very high level example for today. If you don't have a strategy about how your pay groups will work globally, then as you go down your path of connecting Workday to the various external payroll systems that you will need to connect to as you move across the globe, assuming you're global, you may find that you have a bit of a weird experience there at times, especially when it comes to international assignments and how you pay people on a global basis. Similarly, another good one to point out is an ID strategy. Go into Workday with a clear ID strategy. So how do we integrate the data to the other systems? What is the ID, the primary key that we use to identify workers? Because believe it or not, in HR, there's a couple of different IDs you could choose: the Workday employee ID, the payroll ID. But there's a whole strategy behind that you really need to consider from a global basis, and it's especially important for global companies, for me. So strategy. I can't recommend it enough.
This is obviously technical strategy, right?
Technical yes. You can do all sorts of strategy, right? So for me, it's technical. What I'm talking about is technical strategy, integration strategy. As part of that ID strategy, a payroll strategy. So how you set your pay groups up, how you will connect Workday to the different payroll vendors, what vendors to use. That's the number one thing in HR right now, is trying to consolidate down on the number of vendors, especially if you're global. But there's not really one provider globally that can really tick all of those boxes for me at the moment. So how do you use a kind of a collection of those payroll companies to satisfy your needs? It's wider than Workday, right? This strategy. It's the Workday plus. It's the Workday plus enterprise considerations, because in the end of the day, Lloyd, when you think about HR, I think HR is a lot like a human body. If Workday is the heart of the application when you deploy Workday, because it just does so many things, contains so many different modules, it's the beating heart of HR. But your other systems, like your payroll systems, they're your lungs. They're what helps you breathe, what pays people. Your brain, your data hubs, your middleware, and it's all connected. And you have to think about the whole body experience, the whole enterprise experience. Don't focus on just Workday. Focus on that Workday plus experience in your strategy. So that's really, I can't emphasize it enough. It's such an important thing to do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It certainly does. Yeah. Question for you.
Okay.
These 16 projects that you've been on, you obviously got into organizations where they don't have anything. They're not using anything for their HR systems, perhaps Excel spreadsheets, or sometimes even more.
One or two of those.
Yeah, but then there's customers that have already implemented an ERP solution, whether that's going to be SAP, Oracle, or another system.
Yeah.
Is there a particular system that is more difficult to upgrade to Workday, or to implement Workday, to integrate?
It's a good question. It's a very, very good question. And you're right, you called it out. It depends on the customer, depends on where the customer's at in their journey. If you just set up a company brand new, maybe the start of January, and you're doing a successful business and you want to deploy Workday, it's going to be very easy for you to do that, because it's a fresh skills implementation. You didn't have anything to compare it against. Maybe you were on spreadsheets, etc. If you're a company that's been around for 20, 30, 40 years, you've got a lot of governance, you really are global, you have a lot of policies, a lot of regulations to adhere to, and the previous HR system has been doing that for you, in various ways, with some bolt-ons along the way.
Yeah.
Those kinds of customers find it more difficult when you've got more complexity in your wider landscape, because again, it isn't just about Workday, it is about the wider landscape. Those are those are the customers that have more challenges, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bad thing, because Workday is a really big, powerful system that is built to cope for scale, really super large clients on Workday. So that's good from that perspective. But the landscape, this Workday Plus that I keep talking about, that wider landscape is more complex to deal with, and that's where I think having that integration lead type role on the client side helps marry the vision of the SI who's coming in to implement Workday with the knowledge of how HR technology works in general, and I think that's the difference. It's such a powerful thing when you combine those together.
Yeah, we discussed a little bit about having the importance of having someone, looking at the strategy before you started your Workday implementation, and many customers some customers tend to go down the route of, we'll deal with this with our own internal team, and the internal team may or may not have Workday experience. So they may have SAP experience, they may have Oracle experience, or whatever other system they've got. And that would obviously present its own difficulties when you've got an SI coming in to implement Workday. Maybe a difficult question for you to answer. When you said that it was very important in your eyes to have someone who knows about Workday, so on your team, and I second that absolutely. All of the implementations, in my opinion, that have gone better than others, they always have the strategy piece up front, certainly around integrations and certainly around data, which is probably another webinar, to be honest. What did you feel like this when you worked for Workday, and did you feel like that when you worked for the SIs that you've been in? So did you ever
Yeah.
go on site to a customer, big project, small project, doesn't matter,
Mm.
but did you ever think to yourself, I wish they had someone internally that you could talk to about these areas?
Yeah, it's a good question. So my experience from Workday wasn't client facing on the ground. I was this really sort of this bridgehead function between very technical people, i.e., product managers and development. Based in California, in Dublin. I worked in the Dublin office at that time, and then translating the technical speak into English for clients to understand and
That's why you're
working
so
with
good at it, right?
operations. That's exactly, but that's exactly it. And this was something that Workday had recognized very early on in their support and operations team, that they wanted this translator. Effectively, that's what it was, a translator.
Yeah.
And I was good at it, and I loved working for Workday, and hence why I'm still in the ecosystem. And yeah, so that was great. And I guess we were speaking to people, I guess, on the customer side who were named support contacts, so they had a little bit of that by the time that we were live. But when I really noticed it, Lloyd, was when I went working for the service implementer, the SI.
Yeah.
Because we're going in and we're typically going in on a fixed price gig, or maybe it's time and materials, depends. We didn't get involved in that too much. But we're going in and we have a job to do. And we're going in to either design an integration or build an integration. Now, in order to do any of that, there is a little bit of groundwork or legwork that the client has to do, dependencies. So if you're integrating Workday to a payroll system, what are the fields that we need to send that payroll system? What is the frequency of the integration? What is the error handling? What is the support model that we wrap around it when there's errors? Because when it's payroll data, it's critical, it's time sensitive, and we need to have a process agreed on how we can correctly pay people all the time, every time. So those are the kinds of things that you need to consider on the customer side. And when you work, I guess, on the SI side, the clients I noticed that succeeded, to your point, were the clients who had that kind of role there. Now, you can't just have anybody, right? You need to have someone who is experienced. But
Yeah.
the point is, if you have that role on your side, you are effectively getting that bridgehead function into your projects to better serve your needs, which will have a better experience overall. So for me, it's such a given, and I am a little bit biased to it, I guess, because I've seen it work so many times. But it's for me, it's the only way I would like to operate. Having someone to speak to who knows that Workday experience. Now, we also work a lot with other IT teams, and then they bring in this wider experience. This vision of technology, of how how the organization should be building integrations centrally. And the big topic there around every IT department since I've been in this ecosystem has been around middleware and about basically using the same type of integration technology across the whole organization. So HR doesn't just use middleware for its projects. Finance doesn't use another one, this one, another one, We use one central integration technology to consolidate on license costs, and obviously to consolidate on resources and things like that.
Yeah.
That is a really big strategy. Those kinds of conversations absolutely need to happen, and they absolutely need to happen with the wider IT. And that's why I think when you effectively what you're doing, Lloyd, is you're parachuting experts into the client on the ground level and with that Workday technical experience, people like me. But the client still has that IT function, which is bringing that wider enterprise view. And together, those two bodies can work very nicely with the SI and give a better project experience overall. That's the key.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're talking about when you go on site with the customer, and you're obviously talking from a technical Workday perspective, but
yeah,
but working very closely with their IT teams,
mm-hmm.
they would know what the wider IT landscape is for the whole organization.
Wider IT considerations and things like that, you know, and the strategy, for me, it starts with technical strategy, because in the end, Workday is one very big piece of the puzzle, but it's still a piece of the puzzle. If you have a very good technical strategy, and if you have a very good technical consultant to help you build that strategy, that can influence in a positive way the functional side of Workday as well. I'll give you an example. I'll stick with payroll today because it's always a hot topic. If you have defined a very good payroll strategy, and including a pay group strategy, so how you group people together to pay them. So if I pay everyone in my Luxembourg office, I pay them a salary, and I pay that salary monthly. I will usually collect all of those people together and put them into a Luxembourg pay group, something like that. If you can define that strategy early on, you can also define from a functional perspective things like pay group assignment rules. And pay group assignment rules, just for anyone who doesn't know, it's how, when a new hire comes into Workday, how you can automatically assign them to a relevant pay group. And that can get complex, but you can easily think about that strategy upfront before you do your Workday implementation and get that thing working nicely. A lot of, you know, some clients I see today, they're still using manual pay group assignment rules. So that means it's not so efficient. You know, automate where you can, use integration strategy to help you identify where those automations can occur and better shape even the functional landscape. Of course, I would say that because I'm technical, but again, it's the honest view. It's the honest view of the landscape. It is Workday is a technical system at the end. So start with the technical and work your way from there. And that is a little bit against what happens a lot nowadays, which is starting with functional and then doing the technical, and then realizing that you need to change quite a lot of the functional to make it work for the integration.
Yeah.
So start
sometimes too late as well, I've seen.
Yeah, starts too late. I mean, you don't, if you think about it as a house analogy, you don't build the roof first, you build the floor. And if you think about Workday as a house, Workday is a beautiful house overlooking an ocean with a view. Integration is the concrete. It's the concrete in the floor, the foundations that's holding it up and making it integrate or sit with the rest of the landscape. Okay, so that's how you've got to think about it for me. Okay.
Well, one more question from me before we move on to the to the questions from people on the webinar. When you have multiple locations in your project, so you've got a large company with, let's say, 50 different locations, how much more difficult is it from an integrations point of view to make this project work?
Say that one again, Lloyd.
Multiple locations. So you've got an organization. Yeah, you've got multiple locations, and they want to implement Workday and roll out Workday right across all those locations. Is it any more difficult, or is there anything that a customer that type of size would need to think about very early on?
Global and local. Have a global team and create local teams, and basically your global team becomes your champions. You know, they are the experts. You give them the strategy, you tell them how to implement that strategy, and then they basically, it's like teach a man to fish, right? Then they teach the local teams the knowledge, and a lot of the project responsibility would go on to the local teams. I'm doing it right now with with one of the clients, and that's the approach that you need to take. But again, it comes down to having the Workday experience, because the local teams generally won't, but they will have the thing that nobody will have, and there's no one that you can drop in, Lloyd, that I could drop in to any situation, and that is that local experience. You know, the real local experience, that, and the vendor. The key is the vendor relationship that they have. You know, the language barriers, those kinds of things. The customer has those experience, has those capabilities, and it's about blending which we bring, I guess, is that Workday experience, or that Workday Plus experience with them. But that's generally working with the global team, and then giving some project responsibility to the local teams, in my experience.
Yeah, helps
Okay.
also with retention, doesn't it?
Yeah,
If
it
the
does.
local guys can get more involved with this, then they're more
Yeah.
likely to. Yeah.
Well, exactly. And the thing is, right, Workday it's like this. You go into a client, and I'm doing it now, and the first thing I'm speaking with people in Hong Kong. I'm working, crazy hours at the moment. I'm speaking with people in Sydney, and they don't know Workday, and then you kind of rock up, and then you're this Workday expert, and they're so happy to see you, and it's this great feeling that you get when you work with them, and you're starting to teach them things about Workday, and they're getting more self-sufficient. It's just a joy. If you really enjoy teaching, my dad's a teacher, so for me, he always wanted me to be a teacher, but I chose another path. But this is my little give back to my dad. I like to teach people. And it's a lovely experience, and you can teach Workday. It's not impossible to teach. It's quite easy to get your head around if you're willing to listen and willing to see how it works, because it is a bit different than what you might be used to.
Yeah.
But it's a lovely feeling, honestly. Teach a man to fish.
Yeah. So we're going to move on to the questions. Okay.
Sure.
So I've been sent quite a few. What are Kian's views or thoughts on Workday Cloud Platform?
Very good question. So in a previous life, I went to California 2 years ago, to talk to Workday about the platform. I just think it's amazing. I think it's an amazing opportunity for Workday. I think it's an amazing opportunity for clients. I think it's an amazing opportunity for people like me in the ecosystem who just want to build cool things. If you think about what Workday is trying to do, Workday is trying to do as much as possible in the HR space as it can. But I guess the problem we have in HR is vast, and it's different in different countries. It's different in different industries at times. There is no way that Workday could ever, I think, build a platform that could be a Swiss Army knife, if you will, that could do everything. It can do it can do a lot of things really great from a global perspective, but sometimes there is, specific things in a particular country or even a specific industry that it just wouldn't make sense for Workday to build. Yeah. But it might make sense for a customer to build, because if you think about it, Workday is this place where you're bringing together this experience for the employees. So that's the dream that we are living. We are bringing the employees to Workday, to this central place. The cloud platform is this additional place where you can bring, for me, functionality. I think this is what it has to deliver. It has to deliver industry-specific functionality for clients, and it has to do it in a cost-effective way. So maybe that's clients working together to develop these things, sharing the cost. Maybe smaller vendors building apps, but it's got a huge potential, and I think it's up to Workday on how well they want to open it up. It's in Workday's control, but for me, it's got so much potential.
Okay. Next question. Where is the power of one / artificial intelligence going? Where do you feel it's going?
Elimination of the UI, could that be a thing? I mean, for example, today it's possible to be able to, with the technology that we have, to talk to your phone and say, book me 5 days off, and that will, in theory, integrate back into Workday and book your time off in the system. Does that then mean that you don't need to ever log into Workday? Right now, probably not. There are other things that you need to do. But for me, I think in general, and this isn't Workday, this is probably everything, the UI as we know it is a little bit in threat from artificial intelligence, from that ability to be able to just speak. I don't necessarily want to have to log into any system to do a mundane task. If I can, pick up my phone and tell it to do something, and behind the scenes, it makes the transaction for me, that's going to be something that customers, that your end users, your employees, your contractors will naturally gravitate to. We are
Yeah.
all busy human beings. We do not want to spend time doing mundane tasks. We want to be energized. We want to spend our day, for me at least, in technology, I want to spend my day talking about technology. I want to spend my day creating ideas, thinking about saving money, thinking about better architecture, better security. I don't necessarily want to have to do all of the admin. We don't like doing that, and I think that's where artificial intelligence comes in. It will
Yeah.
alleviate a lot of that burdensome tasks that we have to do, and then it's up to Workday and other companies like Workday that they need to then augment the UI experience, because how can you then better serve the user with that UI experience? And they need to think about that. So it's a great question.
It's an interesting one. It is a really good question. It's an interesting one because you hit the nail on the head, right? And I don't know whether there's anyone on the webinar who will disagree with me, to be honest, and say that actually no, I like doing admin. I want to do the admin, because I think that a high percentage of human beings, whether you're that doesn't matter where you work, what you do,
yeah,
you don't really want to have to go through that. You got 10 steps.
Yeah.
If you can go from 1 to 10 really quickly and know that 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on are done effectively, why would you not want to do that? It's like this is so endless. The possibilities are endless for Workday, of where they could take this, because you think about something like Amazon, right?
Yeah.
So yesterday I needed a new duvet. To make you laugh. So I needed a new duvet. Why do I use Amazon? Right?
It's quick.
It's because I can go online. I can actually tell Siri, bring me up Amazon. So Amazon pops up, and then I can type in duvet. I could probably do it via voice now. I don't know. Maybe you can. So I typed in duvet. I found the duvet that I wanted. Bought it straight away, and it was all done within a matter of 10 seconds. Whereas if you'd used something else, perhaps you would have had to find the right one. And do you know what I mean? So perhaps HR technology, and certainly finance technology, is going down the same route, with AI.
It is. And the thing about HR technology and HR in general, over the past number of years, as long as I've been in the ecosystem, as long as I've been in HR, it's been about cost cutting. I mean, it's the same in every department nowadays. But how can you cost cut so much and also then deliver a great employee experience? It's difficult, trying to do these two things. For me, and maybe this is a whole other topic because it would get very technical very quickly, how HR has been dealing with that problem has been through employee self-service. We talk about this all the time, employee self-service, ESS. Systems like Workday are basically designed to help you with that ESS experience. Get employees engaged, bring them into the system, give the onus on the employee to enter the data, saving the costs effectively on the HR side. That's a little bit of a high-level overview, not exactly accurate, but it serves the purpose. When you think about that from the integration perspective, we're trying to deliver a high quality of data. We're delivering at times hundreds of thousands of records a day to a payroll, downstream to different systems, warehouses, etc. If employees are keying in the data, then you're left with the challenge of, well, is the data right? I mean, generally, I find what I've seen referred to in banks referred to as the white glove service, and the lovely white glove. A white glove service is the polar opposite of that, where someone is keying in data for the employee. That's generally a cleaner quality of data. When you're talking about the employee self-service, you're generally talking a lower quality of data, and that presents challenges. So it's about cost cutting. So where does that lead back to augmented reality? I think for integration, it can help with data error handling, spotting the users that are entering the data incorrectly, identifying who they are. Maybe they're having problems with the system. Maybe they're having problems with understanding why they need to enter this information, and targeting those people and helping them have a better experience. And there's so much possibilities with it. it's all integration at the end of the day, everything. You know, Workday itself is just for me, you know, it's not quite true, but it's a collection of web services, you know. So it starts with integration strategy and thinking about that augmented experience, because that is coming, and it's coming, and it's going to really, really improve things on the integration front.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So keep the questions coming, guys. We'll move on to the next one.
Okay.
It's quite a long one from Dominic. Hi, Dominic. Okay. How are you?
Hi, Dom.
So I agree about having skilled people on the client side, but the client needs to transition to support model post go live. Most experienced people on a project will move to the next project at go live, and so there will be a knowledge gap between the project team and the support team. How have you dealt with this in the past?
Yeah, it's a great question, Tom. That's a really great question. So how, from my experience as on the SI side, my perspective from the SI side, is you cannot just leave a client on go live day one and expect them to handle everything. It doesn't work. So what you need to have is a hypercare, and you cannot have a week's hypercare. That doesn't work. You have to have a 4 weeks hypercare for big projects, long integrations, payroll integrations. You know, there's if we go live on the 1st of January, and if your first payroll integrations are kicking in on the 20th of January, as an example, and your SI is leaving after 2 weeks before the first payroll run, that serves no purpose for you, because when you need them, will be on that payroll run day if something goes wrong, or if there's a clarification, why didn't such and such get picked up from the integration. So for me, I only know about that problem from other projects. For me, 4 weeks is the hypercare time that I was always involved in projects, because you have to do that. Now, there's still a problem there. Even after 4 weeks, your clients are still getting to terms with Workday. And so for me, I think it's more, you need to have almost like a pay-as-you-go sort of service for this. You know, you don't need to, and this is the problem I think that a lot of customers have. You don't necessarily need to have a Workday experience person, depending on where you are in your life cycle, there all the time, you know, just sitting in the corner waiting to get the call to activate to go and help. Yeah. But what you do need is the access to those Workday consultants at any time, 24/7, in my opinion, because if you're a global company, you know, payroll integrations can run at any time in the world. But you need that flexibility, and that's why I think there is a bit of a gap there. I think there's a bit of a gap for pay as you go, or something along those lines, where you know, until you are fully ready to serve yourself, you need some help. And there's that gap, I think, from the SI side. But how you can mitigate that for now, based on the existing maybe contracts you have with your client, with your SI rather, is hypercare, 4 weeks hypercare, run books. If you're doing integration, there is no excuse not to produce a run book for every single integration. You've heard of a design document. A run book is a playbook on how to run the integration when it's live. What are the high-level support error messages that can happen as part of that integration? How do you set up a schedule? How do you contact support? You know, those kinds of things. There is no reason why you should not have that kind of documentation handed over to you from your SI to better serve you, and then do knowledge transfer sessions based on those run books in that first month. That is the best way to mitigate based on today's operating model, if you will. But for me, I still think, Dom, that there is a bit of a gap there, and I think that could be served through this pay-as-you-go model. I don't know what you would call it, but on-demand support, basically.
Like an hourly
type thing,
hourly service, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, you know, otherwise, what choice do you have? Do you pay, you know, to keep someone on your books and pay them a guaranteed, pay the SI a guaranteed 2 weeks out of every month will give you, guaranteed work there, and then actually only need them for 20% of that time. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in a cost setting world. For me, what makes sense is probably more an on-demand world. And yeah, that's just my 2 cents. I don't know what you think, Dom. But good question.
He can't tell you.
He can't tell me.
No, he can't tell you. You can only. I wish you could.
he could write in the chat if he agrees.
Yeah, Dom, please open up more on that question, because I think it was a really interesting point. Very, very interesting point.
Yeah.
Got another one here. How does extend / cloud platform change the trajectory of Workday, in your opinion? I think it's very similar to one of the old.
I think it's very similar. So I think I answered it. And I'll sum it up again. It's augmenting Workday. Workday is your knight in shining armor to give you your core, to give you, it's the builder that comes in and gives you a ready-made home, and then the platform is your ability to maybe decorate it to your liking. Okay, to your liking. What I mean by that is to your specific legal and regulatory obligations. And the different industries have different obligations, and that's the thing. That's where the platform comes in. But again, it's back to my point. How much will Workday open it up? How much are they willing to open it up? And what can you build in there? It's early days. Let's see. I think the sky is the limit. It could be huge. It could be really huge for them, and I hope it is.
Yeah, me too. The next question: out of the 16 projects, what's the most difficult project you've been on, and why?
Wow. The most difficult project was a project.
Oh, Dom just said, sounds good, by the way.
Thank you, Dom. Call me. In terms of, I've worked on some super difficult projects, I'll be honest with you. I'll give you one that will always stay in my head, because I will never know how it will finish up, or how it could have finished up, because the project was cancelled for non-Workday reasons. And it was a banking client, major banking client. And we did a strategy piece of work there, and we did it with 6 months. It was 6 months. And they had a PeopleSoft implementation, heavily customized to their organization. And they had bolted on this application there that was very specific to their industry, very specific to them as an organization. And that one application, this bolt-on, I won't say anything about the application name or anything, but the application name served 3,000 front office systems that were all to do with investment management, private management, asset management. And it could not be replicated in Workday, this particular functionality, because it was so custom. And we ended up coming up with a solution that, this was before the cloud platform days, this was back 2015. We ended up with a solution where we would have had to build a fully bespoke custom application to replace this function, this bolt-on that was built onto PeopleSoft at the time.
Right.
And heavily integrate that back into Workday. And this was to do with organization management. And this thing was based around a Swiss Army way of working around how organizations were formed. It was incredibly complex. And the closest thing we had in Workday was a supervisory organization. And this was kind of before things were effective dated. And it was just so complex. It was just mind-bogglingly complex on what we had to do. And the implications of getting it wrong were tremendously scary. But we ended up with a design solution that even then probably would have worked. But it was so challenging, surely because of the size of the customer, number of applications that was involved, and then just the problem was this thing wasn't even HR. This particular function, it was finance driven, and it didn't ever belong in HR. And that's for me one of the most interesting ones, because you've effectively got this supercritical application that's bolted onto HR that HR serves today but shouldn't. And now HR has been tasked with cutting costs and moving to Workday and moving to that journey, but there's not a home for that. And maybe now, if it was fast forward today into today's world, that application would have sat in Workday Cloud Platform. I don't know. But that was one of the most complex ones. And it's a lesson for me when it comes to strategy, you know, HR for HR, finance for finance. Keep it simple and keep the right functions in the right place, because invariably we will have to swap applications out in the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you've almost got to be thinking a couple of years down the road.
You've got to be thinking 10 years down the line. 10 years.
This is a really good example of when you said about the strategy from an integrations point of view being so key on projects.
Yeah.
That, you know, you've
10 years at least, I think.
Yeah.
Think about what's coming down the line. We've got cognitive coming down the line, and there's so much people, you know, selling cognitive nowadays, and a little bit of it is distilled as well, because every cognitive application nowadays just seems to be a chatbot and limited. But the real power of cognitive is the ability to automate those mundane tasks, and you're starting to see it in Workday. You know, entering the time off, requesting different things over API via voice. That's the future. That is going to be very powerful. Your integrations, middleware, having a clear data hub strategy. That's what we're doing with the current client. We're actually using Microsoft Azure Logic Apps, which is a cloud-based Azure function, to do a lot of the integrations that we would previously have been doing in Studio. And the reason we're doing that is because, from a central IT perspective, that is the application that the organization has chosen for all of the different departments. And so we're coming along there. So we've got, you know, we're rebuilding Studio code into Azure Logic code. Quite interesting. You know, so middleware, cognitive. That's the future, and you've got to think about this in your strategy. The one takeaway for me, Lloyd, that I want your listeners to think about is component-based architecture. That is really the future. What do I mean by that? Component-based architecture, hot swappable components. Think about it as the ability to swap something into your environment and immediately have it connected. That is the power of middleware technology. That is the power of potentially cognitive capabilities that are coming in the future. Hot swappable components. Swap out your payroll vendor relatively easy with another one. Don't change your integration. I won't say you can do that, but you can do something more like that with kind of middleware strategy with a better cognitive strategy that will come in a few years' time. But strategy is key. Where are we going? Where is Workday going? Where are we going as an organization? How can the platform better serve us? You know, in the areas that Workday just would not have an ability to serve us. So it's a blend. When you really think about it, now we'll go up quite a chevron now. What does that mean from a support landscape? It means Workday is staying around for quite some time. It's your backbone. And they're going to be giving you a service to allow you to extend Workday where it makes logical sense for you to do that with the platform. You're talking integrations, you're talking your middleware, you're talking standardizing with the rest of the organization. And the final point is, you need to bring these, all of these things together with the right people. So the integration lead roles, the people that can bring you that experience, that Workday experience, and that wider Workday plus view.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really good questions today. I didn't know what
Yeah,
to expect, to be honest. What's
we're
going
not
on?
we're not done.
We're not, still more.
We're not done. We still got some more questions, but I'm just going to do. No, you can start charging me soon, won't you? So one last question, and then we'll go into conclusion, and then we'll
Yeah.
talk about the next webinar as well. We're going to be continuously doing follow-up webinars, but more specific and more technical with Kian. But we're probably going to do them every 6 to 8 weeks with Kian, aren't we, Kian?
Yeah, I want people to recover afterwards. And
So I guess what we could do is we could have a poll out there. What do you guys really want to hear about from an integrations perspective, but heavy tech? You know, how do you see your knowledge developing in the integration space and things like that? What do you want to hear, you know, an expert like Kian explaining? I think that's really important. One last question, all right? Why do some customers require someone with Pechi and or peak-off skills, and how does this affect a project? This one's anonymous.
Okay. So for me, I used to be certified. I can't say I'm certified anymore now that I'm independent. Although I still got my little cert, keep it hung up. For me, you need to think of it like this. Peachy and Peacoff are a little bit more complex data sources to deal with than your normal data sources you have within Workday. If you're talking about Peacoff, if you're talking about Peachy, then you're generally going to be talking about payroll integration. And if you're talking about payroll integration and you have an SI, and that SI is doing that integration for you, then they need to be payroll integration certified. That's it.
Yeah.
They need to be payroll integration certified. And they need to have some experience, because the certification on its own doesn't cut it when it comes to experience.
Says you know from a high level point of view how to do it, but from an actual hands-on point of view, it's a different kettle of fish with integrations.
It's completely different kettle of fish. Yeah. Workday is giving everybody, the consultant, the contractor on the ground, or the client on the ground, it's giving everybody the same tool set to use. It gives you Workday Studio. Workday Studio is used by Workday themselves to build some integrations. So they're giving you all the same tools and technologies, but it's those tips and tricks that the SI can bring to the table, or that the independent contractor can bring to the table. That really is the difference, that experience. But like I said, it's not just about being certified. It really does matter about the experience. I would take someone who is experienced and done at least a couple of Peachy projects over, and who's non-certified, over someone who's done the certification. You know, as long as I interview the person and make sure that they're the right person, because a lot of people say they've got experience. But,
got a really good question here. I need to ask you this before we close up. So we've got someone here from an end user.
Okay.
And I'll just read it from their perspective.
Okay.
In your opinion, does it make sense to have a very restricted Workday rights for IT guys in charge of integrations? In our company, HR is not sure of doing this. Only the HRIS team is fully granted. For this reason, we still need an external partner for integrations.
Yeah. This is one of the things that it's a little bit like a surgeon trying to do their job with a butter knife. You know, you can't do it. You will do a very messy job. Or to be honest with you, I'll tell you what happens. You try and go in and build an integration. You try and get it some data, get it some fields. Maybe it's a custom report, custom web service. And the next thing you know, you get a 401. 401 is a HTTP error code, meaning unauthorized. Okay. And then you got to go and make a request to a COE team to get that access to the data. That has taken probably 6 hours because they're busy on high priority tickets. And it's the end of the day and you still don't have the access and you've wasted 8 hours.
Yeah.
You know, that is not the right approach to go. You need to, there's a few things, there is three things very quickly, Lloyd, if you will let me. There's three things that you need to do in this situation. You need to, one, hire or contract in the right people, trust them. Two, make them sign a non-disclosure agreement to access your data. Three, make sure they're accessing that data securely from a secure browser, from a secure method in line with your own company policies. And the fourth, actually there's a fourth. The fourth is give them the access, straight up, give them that access, because it's just going to slow things down. And you can mitigate against any worries that you may have on the HR perspective, because I get it. There are worries from GDPR perspective. There's worries, what are these people doing? We don't trust them, we don't know them, etc. There's those kinds of worries. But in the end, you can mitigate that from your non-disclosure agreement, and Workday gives you the ability nowadays on your sign-ons, reports, etc., to log and monitor, if you wish, certain account activities to ensure that, Joe Bloggs is not going in looking at someone's compensation when he has no need to,
Yeah.
So there is a much better way to handle this. And this is the biggest problem I have. And the analogy I always use is, I always bring it back to our human health, because we think about our own health a lot more than we think about our system's health. You would not have a surgeon operate with a butter knife for your own health, for your own operation. Why would you bring on a consultant or a contractor on your team who has not the ability, who's not got the security ability to do their job rather? It doesn't make sense. There is a better way. There's a better way. That's my view, and that's how I see it working well. And the other thing, if you think about it, just to really hammer home the point, when you give the implementer access, they have full access anyways. So I don't get the argument. So you need to trust people.
What, for restricting access?
Yeah, I mean, an implementer account is a superhuman account anyways. It's the best account that there is.
Yeah.
So you need to trust people, NDA, and monitor.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
very
so
good
as well.
Question. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we're almost about to run out of time, Kian.
Oh wow.
we still got some more questions coming through, but I think we have actually run out of time.
Sorry, guys.
No, we will continue to do these with you, and I'm sure the topics will get more and more taxing, even for someone like you, or probably not actually.
I don't know. One final thing.
So final word from you, actually.
Final word. And I say this all the time. Everyone, I come in and people, they like to say, "Oh, you're so experienced. You got this and that." Nobody, not one person in this world knows everything about Workday. Not one person in this world will be able to help you on your total vision. This is where we need people, right? You bring together people and you give them the trust. You give them the ability to work together, good tools. We're all working at home now, so Zoom and things like that, and sharing tools. But you'll be surprised. You bring the right people together, and you can have an amazing project. But not one person can help you. Not one person can help you on that full total vision. It is really a team effort. Any project I've ever been in that I've been successful has always been, I've got a really good team around me from every side. The client side, my own side is on the SI. It's people, man. It's so important. We live in HR, and that's the most important thing for me. People.
Yeah, we've got a client, particular client who we placed a really experienced Workday PM.
Yeah.
With that particular client, I won't mention their name on this anyway. And I was talking to the client. It was about 6. The guy's still there actually. He's just been extended for another 12 months. And the client said they've got an SI on site, really good SI as well. And the client actually said to me that particular PM had, and I quote, saved their bacon a number of times of going down the wrong route. Just imagine if they didn't have that particular guy on site. And I'm not saying the SI would have led them down the wrong path.
Mm-hmm.
But how did they know that, you know, when there's no one there that's got any Workday experience apart from this particular PM, and now they've got a team in after as well.
Yeah.
But actually, the client said, saved our bacon a number of times alongside the SI, because the SI can only do what they're being told by the client.
Yeah. They're constrained a
so,
little bit on, and you know, they're constrained by cost, and they're constrained on the job. And you're right. And you do need that fresh pair of eyes that is representing you. You know, it's such an important thing. You know, a client once said to me, you know, in relation to an SI, and they said, we just don't know what they're doing. And all the client really wants is to know what you're doing. They don't understand a thing about Workday sometimes, and they just want to see that trust. And so for an SI, if there's any SIs out there listening, you know, you need to be showing the clients that they can trust you, that you're doing the job correctly, and that sometimes doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So
I think most of the SIs are pretty good where that particular point comes up. Most of them are, but you do hear, of course, there's different teams within the SIs, isn't there?
It's different. There's different. We're all people. People.
You need that from a client perspective. You do need that person on the ground, and this is from my perspective as well. You do need that person, whether it's a technical person, a PM. Ideally, you need the whole team. We did a blog some time back on the people that you would need to have a very, very successful Workday implementation. There was an integrations lead in there. There was a PM in there, and definitely someone around data. That was our recommendation. If anyone would like a link to that blog, I'm more than happy to send that to you as well. But look, Kian, thank you so much. I owe you a steak or a Guinness,
or both, maybe both,
or both. Yeah. Thank you so much for spending the time. And
thank you, pleasure, mate. No problem at all.
And thank you for everyone who joined the webinar this time. The next webinar that we're going to be doing in 2 weeks' time is going to be all around Workday financials. So be sure to join in. Much appreciated, guys. Thank you so much, Kian.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.